Yep. All right. Here we are. This is the first episode of a new podcast that we're doing. No Party Preference. Before we get into why it's called that and what this is going to be about, however it is that you got here, we're glad you're here. But if you want to help out even further, you can go to GameRageMagazine.com and check out all of our other podcasts, such as All Gas No Trash, the music podcast, Anime Syndicate, which is all about anime, the Buttfuck Nowhere Show, which is just about random butt fuckery. Also, maybe actual butt fucking. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? You have to tune in to find out. We have Movies and TV, Game Rage Wrestling, Panel to Panel, Team Killing Glitch Tards. Also, Without Censor, the Game Rage interview podcast. And goddamn, if it's not some of the greatest interviews that have ever been had on the Game Rage Magazine network. So you can go there and check them out. You can follow us at Game Rage Magazine on the Instagram and TikTok, or yeah, that's the ones. While TikTok still exists, you can follow us there. Anyways, I'm here today. I'm Josh. I'm here today with Adam.
Hello.
Present. And so if you're familiar with our other podcast, you've probably heard the Central Unintelligence podcast, which is kind of like geopolitics and world events. I wanted to talk more about like kind of just politics in general, or specifically American politics, because that's obviously where we live and that's what we know. And I didn't feel like it was, I don't know if the word's relevant, but it didn't feel appropriate, I guess, to talk about it on CUP. It felt like that's more of a global kind of thing. And this stuff is more of shit that's like the American political scene here at home. And I also thought this was a great time to kind of start something like this, because obviously we are heading towards this is an election year for the president of our country, the United States. And I just felt like this would be a good thing to do, good thing to start. And honestly, I'm not going to lie. Any content is great, is good as far as I'm concerned. Any content, any more, whatever we can do to put out more content, I'm fucking in favor of. So I just said, fuck it. Why don't I want to talk about politics and some divisive topics and things that are probably going to be extremely controversial. And I just want to talk about them and discuss them and analyze them. And I figured, cool, well, let's make it its own podcast. So then that way, if we piss people off, they'll just only hate that one. And then maybe they'll like the other stuff still, I guess. Who knows? I don't know. But anyway, so this podcast is going to be basically about that. It's going to be about politics and shit that's going on. So this first episode, I just kind of had planned out essentially just to kind of be like an introduction. It's just going to be basically talking about what this is, what I want it to be about, talk about my own personal political leanings a little bit, I guess. And, just kind of go from there. And so part of the reason why I decided on the name No Party Preference is because that kind of reflects a little bit of my own political beliefs. When you go to register to vote when you're 18 or at whatever age you decide that you want to vote, there's a little thing on there that you get to pick Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, fucking Green Party, fucking Communist Party. I don't know. There's all a slew of things that you can vote on. And one of them is No Party Preference, which is an option that you can click. And I do think it's interesting how we get put in these fucking boxes, right? We get put in these, oh, well, if you believe this thing, then you're this thing. Oh, but you can't believe this other thing. Like, okay, abortion, right? If you're pro-abortion, well, you really can't be a Republican because they definitely don't like that. And if you're anti-abortion, then you really can't be a Democrat because then they'll just crawl up your ass because they are all in favor of abortion, right? So I hate how we have to be segmented into and further divided into these little fucking, like I said, little boxes. So to me, No Party Preference is the epitome of the elimination of all political parties, right? That's kind of like where I politically am.
General disdain for the structure of our government.
Essentially, yes. It's I have a general hatred and disdain for the way our shit has what it has turned into. And I also may or may not want to. I may or may not becoming an anarchist as I become fucking older. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like government really just pisses me off. Every time you think about it, it's just somehow it just pisses me off one way or the other. But anyways, before I had this whole, I don't know, I don't want to say revelation or whatever the case may be, but I felt like the box I probably fit in was independent. Like when I first went to register to vote, I clicked the independent box because I already knew off the gate, I'm not down for just being considered right. I'm not down for just being considered left. At 18 years old, I said, no, I don't want to be associated with an ideology, right? Well, little did I know, because I was 18 and I was fucking stupid, and maybe not just stupid. Well, I was stupid, but also inexperienced and naive. I didn't realize that the independent party is its own ideology. It's not independent. It doesn't mean what it says to mean. And one of the things that I was very shocked about, what I learned when I'd been registered as an independent for probably like 4 or 5 years before I actually looked into the party. And the only reason I looked into the party was because I would generally vote for whoever was the independent candidate, right? Like that's kind of what I would do. I'd look at some of their policies, and there was one guy it was 1 year. I don't remember which. I don't know if it was the 2012, maybe. It might have been the 2012 election, but I went to look at the guy who was running as the independent party, and I was just like, this guy's like talking a lot of shit about Jesus, and he's talking a lot about, and I'm like, what the fuck? That doesn't really seem like it floats with the independent party. So I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna go on and check it out. So I go on and I look, and what do I see? Oh, it is rife with Christian iconography, and it is basically Republican light. It's like an alternative Republican Party. Everything is super right wing. Everything is super fucking Jesus-y. And I'm just like, God damn it. I've been duped. I've been tricked by them co-opting the name independent and making it seem like it's not associated with the right or with the left. And I also kind of was tricked by Ron Paul being the only independent congressman at the time. I don't know if he's been the only one that's ever been on the independent ticket to be in Congress, but he switched from being a Republican to being independent. And it was in protest of something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I thought, oh, cool, man. He's like saying, fuck the system, man. No, he's just basically saying he's still a Republican, but he's just not. It's kind of like this whole thing we have nowadays with, the way you identify, right? It's like, oh, you're identifying as a Republican, but you don't want to be a Republican or whatever. It's just, you claim independent. Now, so go ahead.
So being the jackass that I am, I thought independent was a catch-all for everything else that wasn't under the umbrella of Republican or Democrat. Because you have like, I don't know if the Green Party has its own party affiliation that you can register under, or if independent. It does. Okay. Because I was trying to remember if that was the case or not. But yeah, I thought independent was just kind of the catch-all for everything that wasn't either Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was. People who didn't fit on the sides of the ideology, which is kind of what I thought that it was, because obviously the Republican and the Democrat Party have essentially created their own separate ideologies, and they've created their own dogma to go with the ideologies, and punishments and ostracizations. Yeah, ostracizations. Word of the day. Ostracizations.
Ostriches.
Yeah. If you look at those two things and you want an alternative choice, you think independent. That's what you just think. It's the third one on the list. And what's funny, like I said, is that one goes to the right. And when you think Green Party, I was like, what the fuck's this Green Party nonsense? After I figured out I'd been duped. So then you look at the Green Party, and the Green Party is essentially just Democrat light, but they want more. They believe in the environmental issues more, right? They're more heavily geared towards
more progressive ideas,
progressive environmental regulation and things of that nature, right? So that doesn't really, that's very specific. And then you get into essentially what's the fifth option. That's because there's 6 options when you go to register that are the main ones on there. And it's like I said, it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, and then Libertarian is like the fifth one that are on the form. And I think there's a box you can, or there's a fill in the blank one where if your party's recognized by the state, but it didn't have enough people in it to click to be able to have its own box or whatever on the thing, they let you fill in the blank, right? If you're like a member of the Communist Party, because that's a thing. I think there's a fascism party actually that exists within that's recognized by the government. I don't think there's really anybody that's in it, but again, still exists and is recognized. So when you get into the Libertarian Party, I thought, hey man, cool. Libertarian sounds fucking great. I read up on what they're about. I changed my shit to Libertarian, right? Changed it to Libertarian. I said, this seems to align with my views. It's essentially generally about freedom. It's all about more freedom, less government involvement in your life, right? That's the kind of the crux of it. Now, over the last 15 years or so, maybe it's been since I did that, the Libertarian Party has changed. It's morphed. It's essentially turned into, for lack of a better term, it's turned into a far-right political party. And it's become extremely centered on God and Jesus, and it's extremely centered on, I guess the word is Republican ideals, right? Which, again, someone who's a libertarian but is in favor of banning like abortion, those two ideologies they're opposing, because the true libertarian ideology is more freedom, less government involvement. So a true libertarian, as per what the party has generally been in the past, is, oh yeah, you should be able to have an abortion, let's say. And I'm just using abortion because it's a topic, right? It's like a main topic. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So would it be like, in that particular case about abortion, it's not whether it would be the choice to have the choice to do that.
Right. Yeah. It's leaving the choice up to the individual, not for the state to tell you what it is you can and can't do. And it's very strange that it's morphed into this. And one of the things I think is what's happened over the years is that the old Gadsden flag, the do not tread on me, right? That's kind of been co-opted by the party, like the Republican Party as of late. And that's basically been kind of the libertarian flag of saying, hey, we don't want the government to fuck with us. We just want to be left alone, right? That's kind of what it was intended for. And now that it's become essentially just I'd say even a further extremization of the Republican Party, and it's become, like I said, the extremist group of Republicans, I can't go with it anymore. I can't. The party itself has changed, and it's taken its principles and changed them too much to where they no longer align with what I believe.
So this is much like Qui-Gon Jinn or Ahsoka finding out that both the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force are essentially horseshit, and living somewhere in between is the real essence of life, or anything that has any true meaning is going to be found in the gray.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's 100% that. And so now I have essentially had to change my political affiliation because, and one of the things is there's this person that's on Twitter, and they've started to get a pretty good following, and they call themselves the Libertarian. Well, fuck it. I don't give a shit. No one's going to listen to this, but it's this lady, and she's the redheaded libertarian, right? And it honestly kind of pissed me off when she starts saying all this shit that's like what the new mainstream party is of the Libertarian Party, but it's all right-wing shit, and it's just become this co-opting of Republican ideals. And so I can't go with it anymore. So I'm just like, nah, man, I'm out. This shit doesn't fucking fly with me. So that's why I've now had to switch to the no party preference option. And I honestly don't think that there is a political ideology that solely describes what it is that I believe. And we've talked before on other podcasts about, the NPC culture and all that kind of stuff. I feel like people who say, oh yeah, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I believe everything that this is, or I'm a communist and I believe in every single piece of the communist ideology. You're an NPC, bottom line. There is no way that someone capable of independent thought believes fully in every single thing that some ideology says you have to believe in. There's no fucking way. You're just an NPC at that point. And I think that the best way to essentially come up with your own, not that you have to have your own political party or what have you, but taking certain aspects from every party or whatever, that's great. I like I said, there isn't one that necessarily fits to me anymore. And as I get older, it's funny because there's this old saying that, show me a young man who isn't a liberal and I'll show you a man with no heart. Show me an old man who isn't a conservative and I'll show you a man with no brain. All right. That's like a saying that's said. So saying essentially that when you're young, you're very liberal and you're more leaning towards those liberal left leaning ideals. And then as you get older, you become more conservative in your thoughts and in your views. And generally, I think that's probably true mostly across the board for some people or for most people. For me, as I get older, I feel like I'm becoming an anarchist. I feel like no government is the way to go, or it's starting to lean that way. It's starting to look that, man, having no one in charge is probably the best fucking possible option for everybody to just live their life and do what they want. And kind of another thing that I never really agreed with about on the libertarian front of things, which in terms of political ideology, it doesn't make sense how you can have this. You want ultimate freedom, but yet they have a very strict non-violence kind of a clause or whatever, right? That's what libertarianism has been. They're very non-violent, or they don't believe in violent intervention, essentially. So one of the things that's crazy about that is if you want to, enforce the fact that you want everybody to be free, if there's someone out there that's trying to take freedom, well, you have to enforce that in some way. And generally it's through violence. That's generally the way that you get shit done in our world. I mean, I'm not saying it's right, but generally that's how these things happen. And this is why, again, I think I'm leaning towards no government, because essentially the state or the government has turned into using violence against the citizens to maintain compliance, right? That's what it is. That's just a fact. You're not going to get people to comply with these bullshit laws that you want to make unless you're willing to threaten them or commit violence upon them. That's just how it works. And we've let it get too far out of hand, I think, in terms of giving the government more power than it needs. And there's that, again, I'm going to say this a lot. This is going to be a new Joshism. There's that old saying, right? That's going to be a new Joshism on this fucking podcast, because there's also the old saying of never waste a good crisis. And once the government takes something, it's never going to give it back. What do you have, Sam, to say? Oh, so the second you give the government any kind of power, you're never going to get that undone. The Patriot Act was a prime example of that. Yes, I know 9/11 was terrible. It sucked. But we didn't need to make this whole legality of allowing the government to spy on us as citizens, because that's what it did. That's what the Patriot Act did. You can tell me it was for the protection of the country. You can tell me it was to save lives. You can tell me all this bullshit. And you might be right. But I'm more correct that it just gave them the ability to spy on us without warrants, to spy on us wantonly as they please. The FISA, Foreign Intelligence Services Act, that also was part of the Patriot Act. That's also been renewed lately, right? With all these things allowing the government to spy on us or to give them more power or authority over us. And they're never going to just dial it back because they want to, why would they? Why would they give up that power?
Yeah, it's like, I having somebody that solicits and you mistakenly open the door. You open the door and they got their foot wedged in and they're not going to stop.
Yeah, they're not going to stop until you buy whatever the fuck they're selling, right?
I also wanted to make a 9/11 joke.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Let me hear it.
Mr. President, the second Mike has been hit with a mosquito. Because I don't know why I was thinking just like, because you were talking about 9/11.
Oh, yeah. I also have to say, we do have a very fucked up sense of humor at Game Rage Magazine, just in general. And yeah, there's going to be 9/11 jokes probably on this podcast. So great. Thank you for throwing that in. You've now opened the door. Just like the government, we're not taking back 9/11 jokes. We're going to just go full bore now, actually. Next episode is going to just be 9/11. That's 9/11 jokes. But going back to the government having these powers, it just, again, it leads me to believe that we just shouldn't even have it. There's no way that the government can abuse power if the government doesn't exist. I guess, right? That's kind of the way. And everybody, I think we maybe need to go back to living in small tribes again. You know, maybe like communities or collectives or clans. I don't know what the fuck you want to call it. But it feels like that's almost what we need to go back to kind of let everybody just live their fucking lives. And to just let everybody be free, because that's what it should be. It should be about freedom.
I mean, shit, that would be great and everything, but it's so hard to get everybody on the same page, which I think that's why religion was invented. There was so much shit going on, and maybe it's some Palpatine shit. I know we're kind of getting off topic with religion, but then again, the Catholic Church had a big stake in political affairs for many years. But I think having religion or being in communal societies is that it allowed people to feel safe, as opposed to not knowing when your next meal was going to come if you were a caveman, or even further into humanity where little pockets of people were being pulled together, but nothing like what we're doing now, right? It's just nomadic people figuring shit out. Then eventually we become agrarian, where we're building crops and having fields laid out, and
right,
as we progress through all that shit. So it's like, it kind of sucks because you're sacrificing your individuality or your freedom, your absolute freedom back then, to live in a safe space and having a better chance at survival, which is it almost parallels what the Patriot Act and FISA what their intentions are. But there's some kind of quote about the intentions, or the road to hell is paved with good intentions, or something like that, or doing the right thing. Because what it gets at for that is that people that are really dangerous are the ones that think they're doing the right thing and not seeing what the consequences could be for what you think is, it's being like authoritarian essentially. But there is, it's a weird thing to happen, is that you sacrifice liberties that you want in order for humanity to get to this point, in order for us to have a country like the US. We need to have policing available to all states, all cities, to maintain order. Otherwise, we could go back to just straight anarchy, and it could be a Wild West situation where maybe many people die because it's just, maybe it's like Texas, where people light each other up over fucking, running a red light or cutting somebody off and somebody dies.
Yeah, true. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just, these are just obviously my opinions and whatnot. But to give you a better quote about the Patriot Act thing and the FISA thing we're talking about is because I was kind of going to go there next, it's a quote that Benjamin Franklin said. And he said, "Those who give up liberty for security deserve neither." And it's so true, because if you give up your freedoms, and again, I'm not saying that, I'm not one of those guys that's like a fucking super pro founding fathers guy. These motherfuckers lived 275 years ago. They all had syphilis, fucking, they didn't bathe but once a month. All right. I'm not saying these were not peak humanity, okay? They weren't making iPhones and fucking going to space, all right? Sure. They made this governmental system as best as they could come up with. And I think that they had a lot of good points. I think that they had a lot of good things that they installed. And again, they even knew they didn't get it right because they created in creating the Constitution, what did the first thing they did? They created 10 amendments to it. Because they realized, oh shit, after they wrote it, oh, if we fucked up, we need to make sure we put these things in here. And then that's why you have the amendments to the Constitution. And I think a lot of them are good. I think pretty much all of them are good to guarantee rights and freedoms and things like that. But like I said, they weren't perfect. And I think people that take that mentality of, oh, the founding fathers this and the founding fathers that, man, shut the fuck up. All right. Get over this shit. Those assholes weren't fucking God. They weren't gods. They weren't perfect. And I think that's kind of what this has become. Political ideology has essentially become religion. And it was a very good point that you brought up about, the Catholic Church and everything, because that's where I think it's kind of gone, is the party is your religion. And if you if you break one of the religious commandments of the Democrat Party by saying maybe you're not so down with abortion, excommunicated, punishment, hell, ridicule, tar and feather. If you're on the right side of things and you maybe say like, hey guys, I think we should fucking put some common sense gun control laws in, tar and feather him, throw him to the wolves, put him into the fucking Coliseum. And
21 gun or death by, what do they call it?
Oh, death by firing squad. Yeah, so exactly. So seeing as how that's where we're at, and how our political system has turned into something so corrupt because people are allowed to be lifelong. People die in office. Congressmen die in office. You're telling me that someone could be so old that they die of natural causes while they're still a sitting congressman?
Not to mention the fact that if this country were to make any type of progress, I understand that the system, the way it's built, is you have gridlock in Congress pretty much all the time to get to. So only the cream of the crop of bills actually end up being laws, right?
Yeah.
But how the fuck are we supposed to have a country that is reflective of the times if we have dinosaurs that are still in Congress?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that, because they are not in touch with what's affecting us, right? And it's kind of like that thing of how the boomers, right? I mean, we're millennials, I guess, technically. So the boomers are always saying shit about, oh, this and that, and we've had it this, and why can't you? What do you mean you can't afford a house? Just work hard and you'll be able to afford it. Yeah, maybe back in 40 years ago when you were doing this shit, it was possible and pretty easy to do. Nowadays, not so much. And why? It's because of the government corruption with all the regulation and everything that's gone into play to making it more fucking expensive for us to live by the government spending money like it's on fire. Literally, I think it's in August of this year, we will essentially be the highest expense the government will be paying is going to be the interest on the debt. Is I believe it's in August of this year is when that's going to hit, or maybe sometime in 2025 at the beginning. But I felt like I read that it was August, and to me that's insane. And this is just indicative of the reason why none of us can afford to fucking live anymore, is because our government for the last 100 years has just spent money like it was nothing, like it was on fire, and that it was needed to get spent, or else this was going to be the end of it. So, yeah, go ahead.
Even though it'd be cool to live in more communal society where it's just self-governed, I think in some cases, and it's been falling apart with the FDA to have a safeguard for an entire population of a country to be looked after by a third party, and an objective third party, which would technically be the FDA, to have them quality check goods or products to make sure that people don't die. And I think having an institution like that is great, but I also know that things that end up on the shelves of our supermarkets or stores or anything like that end up having harmful materials anyways, because these companies lobby for their product to be, or maybe they do some kind of back end deal with the FDA to say, oh yeah, it's good to go. No problem.
Yeah. And
I would love to have something like that where, and maybe it started off that way, but maybe not so much now. It's not, I don't think it's the safeguard to make sure people don't die from eating or drinking.
And realistically, the only function of the federal government, if it were to exist, should be A, for the collective defense of the populace, and B, for potentially things like that, like an FDA or like an organization where it's like, hey, let's make sure we don't all die from fucking food poisoning or whatever, right? Like, let's make some standards, right? Sure, I'd be okay with that. But when you look at the way it is now and the way it's run, it's, as you said, it's very corrupt. And this goes into the religious dogma that exists where if you question the government, you're looked at as, oh, well, you must be stupid. Oh, why would you dare question the authority of the FDA? Oh, why would I question them? Look at all the shit that they fucked up. At the end of the day, they're just people like the rest of us. They fuck up. They do things wrong. But we shouldn't take everything that they say as the absolute gospel and the word of God. Just like, potentially with the, what was it? Wait, who does the vaccines? Was it the FDA?
The FDA for food, drugs, and
drugs, right? Yeah, it's the FDA who does the things for vaccines, right?
I think so. Yeah,
it's just like the shit with the with vaccines, right? And I'm not like an anti-vaxxer or any of that stuff, okay? But I'm also not just hey, I think we should just take shit just because, right? I'm also not one of those guys. I'm not let's just do what the government tells us every single time. That I got some questions first, right? I'd like to know some things. I'd like to see some paperwork on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's valid and fair. For us to ask these questions. And I think that the religious dogma of, oh, you question this. Well, again, it was very much a thing where if you questioned like the COVID vaccines, for example, I know this is controversial, but if you questioned it, you were ostracized. You were basically told that you are a threat to society and that you can't work, you can't have a job, you can't do any of the things that normal citizens had been allowed to do up until this point unless you got these fucking shots. I won't say, obviously we talk about my Matrix job on other podcasts, but I don't say where it is or what exactly I do. But the Matrix job I had was one of those. You had to get one of these or you were going to be fired. That was the bottom line. There was no question about it. If you question the authority, that's it. You're going to be done and you're out. And now you're going to be poor or homeless or whatever the case is if you can't afford to be without a job. And a lot of places did that. And they did it off of experimental shit that, yeah, the FDA ain't fucking perfect. Sure, they put it through some trials and whatever. But again, putting an imperfect product through an imperfect system at a extremely fast rate is probably not the best thing to do, regardless of what the potential benefit could be, because there's been a lot of bad things that have come out of that. And I think that the dogma portion is what's fucking wrong. And that's what stifles any sort of discussion about this shit. It's the dogma of, oh man, if I say the wrong thing. And I'll give you an example. The next episode that we do, episode number 2, that you will be able to hear, when the 5 episodes come out. But episode 2 is going to be called The Ides of March. And the title for that, I'll get it. You'll understand why, because I'll explain it at the beginning of the episode. But we're going to discuss our current lineup of potential candidates for president for this 2024 election. And one of them is RFK Jr. And one of the things that he did is he said that, oh yeah, you know what? I think that I'm okay with abortion as long as it's after, like 6 months. Like if it's after 6 months, they shouldn't be allowed to abort, right? He said something to that effect. Well, he's a Democrat, right? So what happened? He got slaughtered by all the Democrats who believe the religious dogma of the party that, oh, you can get an abortion whenever and it doesn't matter. Up until the baby being born, you should be able to get an abortion, right? So what did he do? He walked it back and said, "Oh yeah, you know what, man? I was just playing. I was just seeing if you guys are paying attention. No. What I meant to say was that I believe in a woman's right to choose, and she should have that right to choose 100% all the way. So because of the religious dogma that exists with the party, the second you say anything against it, bam, you're already getting lit up, and that's a problem because that breeds falsehoods, that breeds fakeness in the people who are supposed to be representing us, because they don't necessarily give a shit about telling us the truth when it's beneficial to them to lie to us about how they really feel because they don't want to piss off the party and lose their funding or lose their spot in the limelight, right? It's a positive thing for them to keep their personal views under wraps, to keep them tight to the chest and just say, hey, regardless of what my personal views are, I got to vote for the party. I got to vote how the party votes, and I got to vote how everybody else does because, hey, man, I might not get that reelection money next year if I want to continue doing this. And as we know, congressmen make pretty good money. I mean, they make $150,000, $160,000 a year, I believe, as a base salary. And shit, man, that's more money than I make. And I work fucking 3 jobs. And so they get to legislate and do all this horse shit and get to make a really good salary and have full health benefits and all this shit. And there's people that do this for years, for their entire lives. Their whole career is in politics. And that's why I'm in favor of term limits for everything. And really, I will go out and be even extreme and say this, that I fully believe that our governmental system needs to be essentially on a draft basis. And what I mean by that is I'm not sure what the timeframes are because I'm not an expert on this shit. I don't know. But let's just say we do it like it is now, every 4 years, right? And you do them on alternating years so that there's always enough people in there and all that shit. But you figure out a way to say, okay, everybody's name, man, woman, doesn't matter. Whatever you're all in this, what we would call the governmental service draft. And the governmental service draft basically says, if you are selected, then you basically have to go and we're choosing whatever. There's 435 representatives in the House of Representatives, and then there's 100 in the Senate, right? So we're choosing 535 total people. Every 4 years, there will be a rolling draft of people that get randomly selected. And if you get selected, you're going to be required to move to Washington, D.C. You'll live in government housing. We'll give you a nice apartment that you can live in, and you'll be paid a salary. Sure, hell, you could even pay them what they make now. That'd be cool. Pay everybody $250,000 a year, right? The government spends money like it's nobody's business. Fuck it. Pay them that. So if you win this lottery of getting to go, you get the benefit of, hey, yeah, you got to drop your whole life and you got to come do this for 4 years. But after that, hey, you're good to go. You go back to your life, do whatever you want, and you just made basically $1 million for fucking doing your governmental service, right? So that would basically mean corruption is impossible, because how could these companies get in with these people just in 4 years? There's no way. Hell, maybe you only make it 2 years. There's no way that someone could buddy up to somebody to get them to commit these voting and these corruptions as it is now with all this insider trading and all this horse shit if they're only in there for 2 fucking years. And if they're a rando, if it restarts every 2 years, you got to start all over them from scratch every 2 years. These companies aren't going to want to fucking do that. And also, I really think you just basically make taking any bribes or anything from these people, you just make it an executable offense. You just make it a death penalty. Like that's, you just do that. Anyone who's a sitting member of office that takes any bribe or does any corruption or has anything at all, if it's proven that you voted or did something the way you did because you were doing it at the behest of an outside party that paid you or gave you some sort of benefit or promised you some sort of benefit, that's it. Death penalty. That'll stop that shit real quick. I have a real feeling that'll really stop them from doing that. Go ahead.
Well, it's just interesting that you are very much against the
government,
but you're willing to raise the stakes to have people die over bribes.
Well, so I know that my ideal political system, as I'm leaning towards, is just eliminating the government. I know that's not reasonable. I know I can recognize the flaws in my own logic, right? And I can recognize that it's not possible to live currently as these United States without some sort of central federal government. It's just not, our system won't work without it. we require it to continue living in this country. And I also know that my suggestions or beliefs that we should go back to living more of tribal or communal, small communities, that sort of, I know that's also unreal. That'll never fucking happen. We're too interconnected now. The internet's fucked all that up. We have to live as these giant cities and all this horse shit, right? It's just how it is now. So I'm willing to accept the fact that I will need to make compromises to make some sort of governmental system come about that would be more acceptable than what currently exists. Go ahead.
I don't think you're out of touch with what you're saying, because when I think about the governments that work of some of the more happier countries, I mean, I think of Singapore because they have every 2 years you're supposed to maintain a physical weight or physical fitness of whatever it might be. I imagine it's because everybody has to be ready for combat or in physical fitness in case some type of thing happens in some scenario that probably would never happen, but can't be too prepared, right?
True.
And they are very strict about littering and all that stuff. And I know that seems tangential to talking about physical fitness and stuff, but it feels like the stakes are high enough in Singapore about what can and can't be done. I mean, you could publicly drink, which is great, but you also can't litter because there's a severe punishment for doing that type of shit. And what do you get as a result of that? You have clean streets. You have people that are I don't know what the morbidly obese rate is in Singapore, but I doubt it's anything like the US. So Singapore seems to have found a model that works for them. And to tie that into what you're saying, maybe it takes those type of scenarios to raise the stakes to say, this is the punishment for the crime. It's scary, but if you just play by the rules, this could work out for everybody in the best way possible. And I think Singapore is maybe an exemplary case of something like that, because the people know the value of, the lifestyle that they have, maybe even the freedoms of, maybe the rights of what Singapore has within their own government, their own constitution, whatever that might be. They know the value of it. Maybe that's what we've lost here, is we don't know the value of what we have. And maybe that in turn has caused things to go for the worst, is that we don't know the value of voting because none of us have gone to war or done crazy shit or have been in peak physical fitness to know, man, I really want this country. I want my community, my local community, my city, my people, my country to do well. I know what I need to do as far as like me as a person. I know what I need to do at a communal level. I know what I need to do that. But when you indoctrinate people in one camp or the other, I think that stunts growth within a community or even a nation. And as a result, like maybe you end up being more stupid, but also stunt the growth of a nation as well. And I don't know. I guess I hope that's relevant to what I was talking about with Singapore, is that they seem to have got something right with their country, and their people seem to be complying with their government because it works for them. So I don't know if I'm saying like we should be taking chapters out of what they're doing, but there are other examples of countries that have things that are extreme that work. But yeah,
no, I think you're right. Remind me of, if I don't talk about revolution, just remind me, because I might lose my train of thought with it, but because I had something to say about it. But with what you're saying, it's kind of akin to the broken window theory, which is essentially this theory they use in like policing or whatever, about how if you look at two identical blocks on a street, right? Like two identical buildings, you put them on the same street. One of them, if the window breaks and you don't fix it, then over time, another window breaks, and it starts looking dilapidated and down, and that attracts more crime or bad shit to happen, right? Whereas on the other side, that window breaks. The day it breaks, you go and you fix it. Building still looks great. Okay, sure. You can throw the same breaking at it as the other one had, but every time if it gets fixed right away, it's not going to be looking downtrodden and attract the crime, right? Which there's pretty decent evidence to show that that is actually a legitimate theory, that it's still a theory, but it's very plausible, right? And so if you look at like Singapore, like what you're saying, yeah, making littering a crime, punishable by jail time or whatever, man, if you make the crime or the punishment to the crime so oppressive, then yeah, nobody's going to do that because they don't want to fucking deal with the repercussions, right? So maybe it's applying government authoritarianism in a different way that's not completely negative to the people. Like there's a public benefit here of, okay, yeah, littering is going to be super bad. So guess what? All the streets are going to be clean, right? Because we just made it super illegal by making it, oh man, if you get caught littering, it's 5 years in jail, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm necessarily in favor of that, but let's say that you do that. Okay, cool. Well, your streets are going to be clean. Okay, well, let's say, like you said, oh, hey, everyone's got to maintain this height and weight, or not height and weight, but like some BMI standard, or else you go to jail for a year. Or, well, maybe they'll send you to fat camp or something. I don't know. They'll send you to something. But let's say that's what the case is. Cool. Then guess what? Everybody's going to be within the weight standard. It'll be a very small percentage because that small percentage is the ones that were saying, they didn't believe it or they didn't care about the consequences. But the majority, overwhelming, are going to not be whatever the negative behavior is that you're trying to get rid of, right? So, or you were just going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say real quick. I mean, if they are in fact trained in armed combat as a regular citizen, then they also know the value of life and also taking life. So when you vote, man, like it means something. It means something. And I mean, we're lucky to have a country where it's voluntarily done, right, that you can join any service and you could do it that way. And we haven't had a draft to combat another nation or, a world war in quite some time. And maybe we've forgotten what it means to be a nation, and not in a nationalistic way, but just that we've forgotten what our values are.
Yeah, pretty much. And I will say this, that everyone wants to say, oh, what's the solution to this? The real big fucking, I don't know, iconography that's thrown out right now is revolution, right? That's what everybody's calling for, both the right and the left. Calling for revolution needs to happen in order to fix the system, right? Personally, I think that a complete tearing down of the system is what needs to happen. In order, you're not going to root out the corruption without tearing it down and erasing it and starting over. But the problem is, how do we get there? Sure, we can all agree that the government needs to go, and there's more of us than there are of them. So we could make it gone. The problem with revolution, though, and it's been evident throughout history, is that people who call for revolution generally don't understand what that means. And I'll lay it out plain and simple. What that means of how revolution affects the everyday citizen is it means death, it means famine, it means disease, all basically the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? That's what revolution brings. Revolution in a country brings death, destruction, despair. War is fucking hell. That's the saying, right? And it's very true. War is fucking terrible. It's not something that I want to go do. It's not something that any of us really actually probably want to go do. If the need arises and we need to do it, yes, most of us will go and do it if the need arises. And there's a reason for doing it. But all these assholes that sit here on the internet and talk shit about, oh, we need a revolution this and a revolution that, that's just an echo chamber of nonsense because they don't know what the fuck it means. And furthermore, most revolutions throughout history, once they get done, if the revolution, well, I guess you call it the revolutionary side, if they win, very few times in history do they actually know what the fuck they're going to do afterwards. Because everybody's so caught up and now we're fighting this fucking violent conflict against each other that when they do win, they don't realize and say, oh shit, what the fuck do we do now? What happens next? France is a prime example of revolution and change, right? Throughout a country. They do this all the time. France has a revolution fucking once every 100 years, basically. And they are some of the most revolutionary populations on the planet because they fucking don't, when the government tells them shit, they don't take it. They say, fuck this, we need a new government. And then eventually they just rebel and death and destruction and all that shit happens. And once they get done, they go, oh, well, fuck, what are we going to do now? Oh, I don't know. Well, let's just kill everybody else that's not agreeing with us being revolutionaries. All right, cool. All right, well, we did that. Now what do we do? Ah, shit. I don't know. Fuck, let's make up some laws. All right. And they make up
beheadings.
Yeah. Guillotine. Well, that's why the guillotine was invented. Was literally because it was for at the end of revolution, they needed a quick and cheap way to kill people. That's why they invented the guillotine. So people calling for revolution and saying all this shit, they're all full of it. They're all full of shit because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And I'm not saying I know what I'm talking about because I don't. But I at least have common sense. And I think that I at least want to get that out there and be the common sense potentially of, yeah, sure, maybe my views are extreme in one way or another, but at least I'm willing to apply common sense to it and to think, okay, what's the best way for this to happen? What's best for everybody? What's best for this? What's best for that? Sure, like I said before, I know some of my theories and ideals are not tenable. They're not realistic of happening. So you got to compromise. That's what this whole shit is. It's us compromising with each other to create a society that's beneficial for us all, right? And if both sides are so busy fighting each other to do the compromises that they make are essentially ones that just benefit them, we have a problem.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between what Singapore does and what China does about social credit. Like jaywalking knocks your credit score down. Mm-hmm. That is a little bit too much for my taste.
Yeah.
I think there are things that need to be in place in order for shit not to escalate between people. Ultra violence, in the words of Clockwork Orange, for things to be at boiling point. But that one feels a bit too much, that you're not able to buy a home because you jaywalked or some bullshit or
right.
Or who the fuck knows what it is, but that is a little bit too much for my taste. I think a fine or spending time in the clinker or the slammer, like that, you know, it's like getting put in timeout as an adult. That's good enough, I think. You know,
it gets the point across.
Yeah,
hey, you're not supposed to do this.
Yeah, I don't think you should be penalized financially. And yeah, I saw this video, dude. It was this guy across the street. He didn't walk fast enough, or he was jaywalking, and there was this monitor and it had his ID and everything. And as soon as he jaywalked, or as soon as it was discovered that he was jaywalking, flagged, lost 100 points, fucking deducted money or whatever. And I just couldn't believe it. That is the worst case of creating safeguards for your extreme version of government,
right? Yeah.
To make sure that people don't do stupid things like that. But I don't know, man. I do think about that, because when I think about old societies, and I don't know, I can't remember specifically where it happened, and I don't know if it's because we're living in this time that we currently are in, that we haven't had a Renaissance, or we haven't had an enlightenment period, things like that. Because people used to have, I think what they were called like Socratic seminars, you know, back in the, you know, Socrates and in the Greek days, but, you know, in more modern times, quote unquote, 1700s, 1400s, shit like that people would sit around and talk about ideas and things like that. Like the way you're talking about Benjamin Franklin and the founding fathers of the nation, that they just powwowed every once in a while and, hey, let's draft a constitution since we're going to be becoming the new government. I think religious zealotism
religious zealotry, maybe, or political zealotry.
Political zealotry, stunts, ideas and resolutions for the country. I think being a two-party camp is awful. I don't want to say Canada has it right by having a 6-party system, because I think any party should not. I don't think any party should exist. I think any individual that wishes to hold office as the president of the United States should be solely based on what their solutions for what the country, how the country can progress forward. It's not what political affiliation do I have? And that's as much as I need to know. It's how are you gonna address these major topics without parties? Like from the lens of a Republican, from the lens of a Democrat. It's what is the solution and how are you going to bring that about? Maybe you know the scientific field really well. Maybe you were a nuclear engineer and you say, let us try creating a nuclear energy grid instead of what we have in place, because it's a cleaner way to produce energy. I know there's waste involved and shit like that, but what if something like that, like a unique perspective, and then it's critically verified or critically panned or whatever it might be, that there's a consensus that this idea is stupid or it's good, and then you have 3 to 5 other candidates or whatever it might be that have differing solutions for the same topics, and everybody just judges based on what is the best standing solution for how we progress. And I think the best ideas come out from just figuring out, from just people just thinking in general, thinking, spreading ideas. And it's not based on parties. It's just what's best for the country in general.
Yeah. It's the reverse idiocracy, essentially, which that's a fucking great movie. We should probably do a review of that on Movies and TV. I don't know. I thought that was a good movie, but anyways, that's kind of what it is. Yeah, it's a reverse idiocracy. Instead of stifling everybody's thing by telling them you're stupid or you're an idiot for having this opinion, well, let there be no punishment for free thought, for free thinking. And that's really truly what freedom of speech is about. It's to allow people the discourse to talk about these ideas so that they can get them across. And again, if an idea is not that good, then okay, cool. Well, there's going to be the majority of people are going to say, hey, man, that's not cool. We don't like that idea. Oh, okay, well, I still think it's good and I want to believe this, so I'll believe it, but you guys don't have to. Cool, whatever. You know, that's kind of what freedom of speech is about. And stifling any speech is fucking going to lead to basically the situation that we're in now, and even worse. And man, I did not think we were going to get fucking an hour out of this, but that was pretty good. But anyways, obviously you're not going to hear our whole complete political ideologies within an hour. Like it's not something that you can just talk about, right? You got a base understanding of what I believe, and you got some base understanding of what Adam believes, I think, out of this.
I don't believe in anything.
Yeah, Adam's a political agnostic, right? He just don't believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't really care anymore. I just care about what we're doing.
About doing content. Regardless of the topic at hand, he's I don't care. I just don't care.
Yeah. So, yeah. If anything, I'm just here to be a counterpoint or just to poke holes in what you say, and maybe you might have valid points, but at the very least to say, are you sure about that?
Yeah. Because you need that. You can't just. I don't want to be in an echo chamber, because that's what I'm bitching about with these assholes online and these communities of quote unquote libertarians. Like, nah, you're fake ass fucking motherfuckers, and you're just in an echo chamber and you block anybody who says something that you don't like. So fucking echo chamber, fuck off. Like you're bullshit. I want to be challenged. I want my ideas to be challenged, because you know what? In challenging me, maybe you'll bring a perspective that I didn't see it from. And I can say, oh shit, you know what? That's a valid point. I need to reassess my opinion or my theory here. Or I'll say, no, you're wrong. I think that's dumb. And I'll further ingrain myself in my theory or whatever it is. But you can't have the opportunity for that if you don't even fucking talk about it. So in summation, I'll say this. The one thing that we as a people are divided we're divided. This is the greatest time of division in our entire history. I feel like is that we're going through right now of us being divided on not just one issue, but Christ, millions of issues. We're extremely fragmented and divided. And I just want to get and break it down to the base level. And I said this on, I think, the CUP podcast, but I'm going to say it again because at the end of this podcast, this kind of sums up what it is I'm talking about, I guess. And it's that simply, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, blue, green, yellow, orange. It doesn't matter if you believe in Muhammad or Jesus or Moses or fucking Ganesha or whatever, whatever other gods that are out there. None of that really matters at the end of the day, because the only real legitimate color or thing that divides us is the color green, and that's money. Money is the true dividing factor. It's between the haves and the have-nots. And if you are listening to this podcast, you're probably in the have-nots. I doubt anyone who's in the top 1% is fucking listening to this. So, hey, and if you are, hey, why don't you give us some money? We can fucking talk, all right? But anyways, that's what divides us is money. And until we start seeing that shit, all of this is just going to continue. Because we're all still going to be fighting each other over some dumb shit like, that guy's skin color, or that guy believes in some weird thing that I don't like, so I'm going to be mad at him. Until we get our shit together and realize, it's the assholes with all the money that are actually doing this to us and dividing us and causing these problems, we're never going to really get anywhere. So, anyway, this podcast, like I said, it's going to be about political shit. If you enjoy the intro and the outro music, you can get them now off of Millennial Frog's, one of his newest albums, Poverty of Content. And the song is
Poverty of Content.
no, I didn't. Millennial Frog is crazy because he actually hasn't done a title track on any of his songs, which I think is pretty unique, as a matter of fact, because most artists have a title track that is their album title. And maybe that's because of marketing or something. I don't know. But Millennial Frog has chosen not to do that. But the songs are, the intro song was By My Drop Shipping Method. And then the outro song is Literally Just Eating. And again, that's off of his new album, Poverty of Content. So anyways, also you can follow us at Game Rage Magazine on TikTok and Instagram at Game Rage Mag on Twitter/X. If you like spicy memes, where we post them up, Adam is the social media fucking meme entrepreneur. So if you want to follow him for even deeper spicy memes, he's at All Gas No Trash Official.
For lulz and kicks.
Yeah, indeed, for lulz and kicks. And also you can go to GameRageMagazine.com and hear all of our all of our fucking stuff. And you can hear all of Millennial Frog's albums as well. So anyways, thanks for listening. And I guess we'll catch you on the next one.